Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's been a really long time since people have seen my whole face.
Wear one if it makes you feel more comfortable.
We've already seen a lot of people coming in without them.
No mask mandate, day one. How British Columbians are adjusting to the relaxed pandemic rule.
One bedrooms now are $1,600 a month. Some here in Richmond are $1,800. I've seen them.
Squeezed out. A family in Richmond says it cannot find affordable rental housing for all of them.
We've had a real struggle trying to procure them for the last 6 months.
And if higher gas prices have you thinking electric, good luck finding one.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. It is now official. British Columbians no longer have to wear a mask in most indoor public spaces. Day one of the big change comes as the world marks 2 years since COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic. Our Janella Hamilton has more on those eager to shed the masks and others who plan to keep them on.
With no mask on, you can see Danny Zapata's smile as he goes shopping.
It's just kind of like an adjustment, so I'm trying to get used to it.
And while he's comfortable inside a well-ventilated store, there are still places he's choosing to wear a mask.
Especially like where, you can't really distance. Right now it's like out in the open. It's kind of fine, well-ventilated places, but trains, buses, all that stuff, I think I'll still be wearing a mask.
Masks are no longer required on BC ferries and public transit, but there are some exceptions.
Our paratransit service, Handy Dart, we are going to continue to require masks on board that service as a lot of our clients are traveling to and from medical appointments.
Brett Swanson is a regular transit user. He says he's prone to getting sick and will continue wearing his mask on the bus and SkyTrain.
If it's rush hour, you're still going to be not crushed in like it was before pandemic, but there's still you're shoulder to shoulder with folks.
Workplaces can choose to keep mask and vaccination requirements. UBC announced yesterday they will continue to require masks at indoor spaces on campus. But most businesses seem to be dropping the requirement, including at this coffee shop. Angela Williams is the manager. She says while the mask rule is gone, she's keeping hers on. However, she believes the lift on mask mandates will remove some stress for staff when it comes to enforcing the rule with customers.
We do have a lot of staff that I think will still feel the discomfort of people coming in without a mask. So there's sort of a mix of those of us relieved to not have to say it anymore and those of us that wish people would still wear the masks.
Mask or no mask, William hopes changes to the restrictions will bring people together and not cause more division.
I think right now we've seen a lot of people that are still uncomfortable being in conversation with others without masks and being afraid of each other.
But if you're heading to a doctor, a dentist, or into a healthcare setting, masks will still be required. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Burnaby.
It may take time to see if these relaxed rules around masks lead to changes in COVID case counts in BC. But for now, the province is still seeing cases decline. There are 20 fewer COVID-positive patients in hospitals since yesterday. And for the first time since mid-August, patients in critical care have dropped to less than 50. 3 more British Columbians have died from the virus in the past 24 hours, all in Fraser Health. And in a few minutes, we're going to have an interview for you with Health Minister Adrian Dix as we mark the 2nd anniversary of the COVID-19 pandemic. He talks about lifting the mask mandates and responds to concerns from people who feel far more vulnerable right now. Breaking news in North Vancouver tonight. Police there say a man has been shot and killed in the parking lot of a busy grocery store. Police say they were called to the Superstore on Seymour Boulevard just before 3 p.m. today. They found one man with gunshot wounds. He died at the scene. We're still waiting to find out if anybody has been arrested. Mounties are warning drivers of traffic delays in the North Shore, especially on the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team has been called in and will bring you any updates as they become available. Alan Schoenborn has been granted overnight leave from a psychiatric hospital 14 years after he brutally murdered his 3 children. The BC Review Board granted him unescorted overnight leave at the hospital's discretion for up to 28 days. Schoenborn has been held in a hospital since 2010 after he was found not criminally responsible for his children's murders due to a mental disorder. The board says it made the decision to help him reintegrate into society and claims he's made substantial progress. The Crown opposed that decision, claiming he still poses a threat. He is not allowed to contact relatives of his victims, and he's not allowed to drink alcohol or use unprescribed drugs. It has been another deadly start to the year in BC. In January alone, 207 people were killed by poison drugs. The horrifying crisis claimed almost 7 lives a day in the first month of this year. For a fourth straight month, more than 200 people have died, most of them men between 30 and 59 years old. These numbers come after a coroner service report that urges the province to bring in a safer drug supply policy within the next 3 months. The coroner says nearly 1/4 of all street drugs recently tested have contained extreme levels of fentanyl.
That this is not a risk confined only to urban areas, faces the entire province in communities big and small, and we really need to see some significant changes.
The province is starting to see a rise in deaths in smaller and medium-sized communities as well. Kamloops recorded 11 deaths in January, making it the third most affected community after Surrey and Vancouver. Gas prices may have fallen slightly across BC today, but the cost of fuel is still close to record highs. In Metro Vancouver, drivers saw prices fall from $2.15 a litre to $2. Experts say there may not be much of a break in high prices because of market volatility caused by the ongoing war in Ukraine. Those record high gas prices have more and more people thinking about going electric. But if you're considering making the switch from gas to battery-powered cars, you might be in for a rude awakening. As John Hernandez reports, there aren't many of them, and wait lists are growing every day.
Prices at the pump are no sweat for Robin McQueen.
I'm happy that I drive right by.
The physics instructor bought an electric car last summer and estimates it will save him about $4,000 a year on fuel.
It's nice that it just charges overnight and you don't have to go to the gas station. It's nice that you don't have to pay for that gas. $1.79 per 100 kilometers.
The recent EV owner considers himself one of the lucky ones. Global supply challenges mean electric and hybrid vehicle stock is low in Canada and beyond.
We've been out actually for about 6 months. We've had a real struggle trying to procure them for the last 6 months. We typically would usually have about 50 to 60 in stock at all times.
And sky-high gas prices have only fueled demand.
In the last 60 days, we've seen about a 150% increase in inquiries alone.
We did a lot of shopping around. We went to Toyota.
Curtis Wensley decided to make the switch last November after his previous vehicle was totaled. He was supposed to get his plug-in hybrid in December.
And we called them in December and they're like, okay, it'll actually be April. So we're like, okay, and then give it another month, give them another call. So how's April looking? And they're like, maybe June, July.
Industry experts say the confluence of supply and demand pressures mean you could be waiting upwards of a year unless you're willing to go luxury or go used.
The prudent way to get into electric cars is buy a used car, and they are much less riskier than an ICE car. You never have to worry about transmissions, engine failures.
But even then, there's competition. This Chevy Bolt owner is yet to even put his car on the market, and he's already fielding offers. One from GM to buy back the car, and another from Tesla to trade it in.
I've got people banging down my door.
And if you're lucky enough to get one, it will come at a price, even with provincial rebates, with cars like this selling for almost as much as new. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Premier John Horgan met with members of BC's Ukrainian community today. The province is preparing to welcome thousands, even tens of thousands of refugees, most of them women and children fleeing Russia's invasion of their country.
We all stand ready to open our hearts and our homes to the refugees who will be coming, but there are challenges, and we were identifying issues around translation, issues around trauma counseling, and also how we as a government, immigration not a primary responsibility of the province, but of course, none of that matters at times of crisis.
The province is setting up a 1-800 number to help existing agencies, which Horgan says are simply overwhelmed with offers to help. Securing housing is a big need, and while he asked for patience as programs are set up, Horgan applauded people for wanting to open their own doors. He also condemned the Russian government for what he calls the unimaginable horrors it's inflicting on Ukraine.
The violence that's being put upon Ukraine by the Russian government is totally unacceptable. I reinforce, I believe, the view of all British Columbians that Vladimir Putin should step down, step back, and get the heck out of the Ukraine.
The invasion has caused the largest displacement of refugees in Europe since the Second World War. Record rental prices and very little supply to go around. It's a familiar crisis across Metro Vancouver. In Richmond, one family is living in very tight quarters, and as Steve Jong reports, more affordable housing is just out of reach.
Lisa O'Sullivan, her son Cyril, along with Lisa's cousin Sandra and Lisa's mother Betty, are feeling squeezed. They share space with another family in a small home. They want more space of their own, but they simply can't find it.
New houses are being built, but are they for low-income families, right? Or they're just sitting there empty.
Lisa's been on the hunt for 2 years now, but so far she's come up empty. What housing is out there costs more than the family can afford.
1 bedrooms now are $1,600 a month. Some here in Richmond are $1,800. I've seen them. And those little townhouses, they're not even that big. They're very small, and they're like $3,000.
The family says they've reached out to the city of Richmond to ask about the low-end market rental program, an initiative to provide cheaper housing. But the city says there aren't enough 3 or 4 bedrooms for Lisa and her family. Advocates say Lisa and her family aren't alone, that the problem is widespread in Richmond.
What we've been asking for is for rental housing projects and affordable housing projects, if there are any, to be fast-tracked, that there should be a different route for them to get through.
Dee Whalen, president of the Richmond Poverty Reduction Coalition, believes the city doesn't take reports of rising unaffordability seriously enough.
Our group is mounting a campaign to ensure that affordable housing, what we call affordable housing, what non-market housing, is on the agenda.
In an email to the CBC, the City of Richmond says it has built and occupied 344 affordable housing units in the city since 2018, all the time approving the construction of over 5,000 strata condo units. O'Sullivan says that just shows the city's priorities are in the wrong place.
And I just asked the City of Richmond is, when are they going to be building or having this accommodation for affordable housing for people like us, or anybody for that matter.
For now, Lisa and her family are priced out and left feeling ever more financially squeezed. Steve Jong, CBC News, Richmond.
March 11th, 2020. 2 years ago today, we began to hear some familiar lines from BC's top doctor and our health minister.
It's the declaration of a pandemic by the World Health Organization, the fact that we all can be part of this work together of containing and slowing down the virus here in British Columbia.
Adrian Dix reacting to the declaration of a global pandemic, advising British Columbians that we'd get through it if we committed to working together. He and Dr. Bonnie Henry would then give daily updates for months, their faces and advice becoming features of our lives, and their decisions carrying even greater consequence. And they still do. Today marks 2 years since the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic. BC, like governments everywhere, was tasked with the immense challenge of responding to a deadly disease we knew very little about. We know a lot more now, but since then, nearly 3,000 people have died in this province. Dozens more have died each week this month. Thousands more have fallen ill. Yet the pandemic response is changing again, the burden of responsibility shifting largely to individuals. To take stock of where we've been and where we're going, we're joined by BC Health Minister Adrian Dix. Minister, first of all, why is now the right time for people to not have to wear masks indoors, even in crowded places like transit and in stores?
Well, in BC, we've consistently followed the science and followed the guidance of public health. Over the last month, you've seen it every day. You've been reporting on it every day, Dan. Test positivity's gone down. Hospitalization's gone from 1,059 at the height of the Omicron variant of concern to today 368 people in hospital. So this is a balance. And in that balance, Dr. Henry and Public Health determined this was the time to recommend to people that we end it being the law to wear masks. Doesn't mean people will stop wearing masks, but it's not the law to wear masks in indoor public spaces anymore. It's following the evidence, following the science. We didn't rush. Dr. Henry and her team took her time, and they took these measures yesterday.
Now, I'd like you to listen to a Vancouver woman, Kayanta Martins. She's immunocompromised. She's very worried the onus is on her now to ensure her and her family's safety. Take a listen.
I have COPD and my kids have lung issues, and we want to be able to assess our risk at a time when the government unfortunately is removing protections.
How do you respond to her concerns, Minister?
We've had more adherence to public health measures than anywhere else. And that's the reason why BC, and you see it on your website every day, Dan, BC has had a lower rate of serious outcomes than most other equivalent jurisdictions in North America, the lowest of any jurisdiction of 5 million or more people in it. It's because of what the people of BC have done and our healthcare workers have done. So the measures have changed throughout the pandemic based on the circumstances. And right now, the circumstances are such that it is, I think, possible to release some of those public health measures. And remember, those measures also have their own consequences. I have a chronic disease, I have type 1 diabetes, and that means in my daily life, as with her in the case of COPD, everyone is making adjustments all the time. There are protections in place, and I think people are incredibly supportive of one another. I think this is the time to take away some of those measures, to ease those restrictions as cases go down. And there was always going to be a moment when some of those restrictions were taken off, and Dr. Henry and our public health teams, based on the science, have done it. You'll recall over the last week or so, some people have criticized us for not acting quickly enough. But in BC, we've had fewer changes in restrictions than almost any other jurisdiction. We've been more consistent. And this consistent, methodical approach has worked well for us, and it's been supported by the public. But everyone has to, in all matters, has a role in managing their own risk. We do every day. Everybody with chronic disease does every day. And it's a challenge, and I understand the anxiety that many people will face. We've been living with this now for 2 years, and this is a change, and it'll be challenging. And I am very empathetic to what all people with chronic diseases or other challenges face in this time. But I think it's the right time to make these changes based on the evidence. That's what Dr. Henry did yesterday.
Minister, on that point about chronic diseases and those who were challenged, Premier John Horgan, who is now a cancer survivor, compelled people, asked them to wear a mask around him as he did a news conference today. It was in the notice that was sent out to the media and others. Why not keep the protections in place for example, a cancer survivor or somebody else who takes transit and is now worried that they're going to be exposed more to COVID?
Well, the same rules apply to everybody. There's no special rules, and Premier Horgan isn't asking for any special rules. In every workplace, I'll just give you an example. I came into work today, had my mask on when I went from my apartment to my car, took off. Today I was driving alone in my car. I came down to the downtown offices here. I did an event where I wore a mask when I was around other people, except when I spoke, as in this moment. And that is the pattern and what I've decided to do in my workplace. And I encourage people in all businesses, there's still in every business in BC a requirement, a public health order to have a COVID safety plan. That will continue to be in place until at least April the 9th. So in every workplace, that's the same. And we do have to manage our risk in that way. And I encourage people, both to wear masks. I'll certainly be wearing masks when I get groceries later. And there's no special rules for me or Premier Horgan or anyone else.
Lastly, Minister, appreciate your time. 2 years in, there is a certain amount of perspective that I'm sure you and Dr. Henry and other officials share. Are there things that stood out to you that you would have changed in BC's response, knowing what you know now?
I think we've consistently, got better in our response. I'll give you an important example. It's about surgeries. In March of 2020, I was involved in a decision. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, which was to delay non-urgent scheduled surgeries, all medically necessary surgeries. And we delayed a very significant number of them because we were looking at what was going on in Italy and to an extent in Hubei province in China, and we were making decisions based on the unknown. Since then, we have delayed surgeries at different points in the pandemic, but we've delayed significantly less surgery, so there's less catch-up. We've made changes in the system to approach that. So that's an example of learning. So we put in a plan in September 2020, which has guided our acute care approach since then, based on the evidence. And one of the things I admire most about our public health leaders in BC, Dr. Henry, Dr. Gustafson, our Deputy Minister, Steve Brown, is that they're always learning. There is not international reports that Dr. Henry doesn't read. She's always engaged in them. So we learn, and I think our response has consistently got better. And the other thing is, it's demonstrated the willingness of people in BC to sacrifice for one another in difficult times. There's lots of talk about division these days, Dan. 94% of adults are vaccinated, 6% are not. That's division, but it's division at 16-1. It's not division at 50-50. We've had incredible support from people in BC, and all I can think of on this day is gratitude to them and a real sense of condolence for all those who've lost loved ones in what has been a very difficult time.
Minister Adrian Dix, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
COVID-19 has now killed more than 6 million people across the globe, including more than 36,000 in this country. Canada's high vaccination rate and decreasing number of hospitalizations has many people hoping we are finally done with this disease. But as Christine Birak shows us, experts say who are tracking the data say COVID-19 is not done with us.
This pandemic can feel like a never-ending loop. Many are welcoming the lifting of restrictions, but experts nervously point out.
Although we're on the downslope of this wave, we're not out of this yet.
With wastewater surveillance replacing PCR testing, researchers can't actually track the number of infections. Samples can indicate whether virus levels are rising or falling, and current data suggests the virus is stabilizing at very high levels. Still, Canadians now have more protection than ever before.
A combination of vaccine-induced immunity and infection-acquired immunity has raised our levels of immunity quite high.
Hospitalizations are also coming down, but the bigger picture does show nearly 4,500 Canadians are now lying in hospital beds with COVID-19. That's almost as high or higher than the peak of every other wave in this pandemic.
We still have a lot of cases that we're still seeing hospitalizations. We're not going to let that get in the way of the fact that we all want this over. And that's obviously a fairly dangerous position for us to be in.
Already, a more contagious subvariant of Omicron called BA2 is spreading in several countries, including Canada and the UK. The UK dropped masking and many other restrictions over a month ago. Now, testing shows COVID cases are spiking while hospitalizations and deaths are creeping up.
We know that many people in the UK have had COVID, so if they have a certain variant is able to rise and cause problems again, that's a warning sign for us.
As restrictions are lifting, health officials are warning measures could return in the fall. New variants remain a real threat. And while vaccinations and Omicron infections are offering us good protection now, some of that immunity will likely wane in the months ahead. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Johanna is taking the day off, so Fiona Odlum is back with our first look at the BC forecast. What is in store for us, Fiona?
Well, we turned the faucet on and now it seems we can't turn it off. We have a lot of rain coming our way over the next 24 hours. So this is what we're looking for just in the next 6 hours. We're looking for about 8 millimeters of rain into Tofino, 2 into the Squamish zone, Vancouver, 2 millimeters as well. And these areas that are showing nothing right now, well, that's where we're going to be looking for a little bit of snow coming our way. But as we look into Saturday morning, those numbers start to bump up and then they really start to escalate escalate as we look into Saturday night into Sunday. Monday, oh boy, it's going to be rainy. So what we're looking for in terms of snow, the bulk of it is going to be into that Squamish area where we're going to be looking for up to 11 centimeters of snow as we move through the weekend. And so we could see some travel concerns there. We're looking for 4 degrees at 7 a.m. and that rain. But then we get a break at noon at 8 degrees. And then by 4 o'clock, the rain starts up again.
Okay, thanks, Fiona.
Weather update brought to you by Alegria by Cirque du Soleil. Opens March 25th at Concord Pacific Place.
A new wave of attacks today as Russia renews its efforts to advance on Ukraine. The latest from our correspondent in Lviv, Ukraine, including an attack on a nearby airbase. Stay with us. And hello to everyone watching on our commercial-free live stream tonight. Thanks for being here. The climate crisis is top of mind for many people and many industries. As it turns out, one place to start is on the top of your head. Fiona Odlum has more about a salon in Martensville, Saskatchewan, which is tackling climate change, one hair appointment at a time.
I want to trim. Lindsay Tkach is more than happy to trim her customers' hair, but where those hair clippings end up, well, that became a problem for her. Tkach has owned Dahlia Salon and Spa in Martensville for over a decade. And after a few years, she realized her output of waste needed to change.
We're down to maybe a garbage bag a week to actually put in the garbage bin into the landfill. Before, it would be 5 bags a day that we would be, because all the foils, there's so many foils.
So now, the hair salon saves and recycles almost everything.
So these bins here is where we put all our collections of our waste that we collect.
Not only the foils, but also the leftover hair dye, shampoo bottles, aerosol hair cans, and all that hair that was swept up and thrown in the trash.
We push it down as much as to compact it, but that's where that goes.
But local recycling centers don't accept human hair or chemically laden bottles. So, the salon ships it all to a Canadian company called Green Circle Salons, which has found creative ways to reduce waste.
The number that we know is that every single minute, salons across Canada and the US send about 875 pounds of waste to landfill every minute. So, yeah, so 95% of that, right, it can be diverted.
Green Circle Salons offers a recycling service for hair salons. For example, they're turning your old bits of hair and used shampoo bottles into a type of bioplastic. These reusable plastic pellets are turned into bins to be used at salons. Waste that would end up in the landfill is now turned into car parts, bottles, even renewable energy.
There's a lot of opportunity inside that, but there's also, you have to build the scale, and you have to build the funding to be able to bring that to market in a way that makes it commercially viable.
So we find that. Back in Martensville, Tkach is thinking about a better planet for her children.
Anybody who's even just getting a little trim is actually saving the planet as well.
She's proud to have reduced her carbon footprint, one haircut at a time. Fiona Odlum, CBC News, Regina.
Ominous new signs tonight that Russia's 16-day war against Ukraine could be entering a new phase with new targets and possibly new dangerous tactics. But amid calls for Western intervention today, U.S. President Joe Biden was blunt on why NATO troops must not get directly involved.
Don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say.
That's called World War III.
Tonight, the Russian encirclement of Kyiv continues. New satellite images show Russian military units moving closer, unleashing heavy artillery barrages. This image shows a fire raging at an international airport just outside the city. Well, that vice tightens. Russian forces are now broadening the scope of the war, driving to capture a major strategic city in the east and launching missile strikes on two others in the west. Chris Brown has the latest from the western Ukrainian city of Lviv.
The burning remnants of what Ukraine says used to be a shoe factory in Dnipro is one of Russia's latest targets. It's state terrorism, said a Ukrainian officer. One person was killed, but it could have been much worse as 3 missiles hit near homes and a kindergarten as well. In Mariupol, surrounded and cut off from food and water, the mayor told local media that Russian bombing has killed more than 1,500 people in the city. There are no casualty figures for Ukraine's military, but its losses may be heavy too. In Lviv Friday, there were funerals with 3 wooden coffins and 3 families saying anguished goodbyes to their fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons. One mother caressed her son's casket. When the lid was removed from another, the soldier's wife stroked his cheek and held his hand for the last time. How they died, where, or what the circumstances were is not something anyone would discuss. The mother said her son, Andrei Stefanishin, was killed on the 2nd day of the war. Unspeakable regret, longing, heartache, she told CBC News. It's very difficult for me. Sensing perhaps after 2 weeks the fatigue and despair of his nation, President Vladimir Zelensky went outside in the Kyiv sunshine. We still need time, we still need patience, wisdom, and energy to reach the victory together, he said, imploring Ukrainians to push even harder. For the first time in a week, air raid sirens sounded in Lviv, as Russia now appears to be striking even deeper into the country. Earlier in the day, missiles, likely fired from Belarus, hit 2 military targets 130 kilometers from the city, including in Lutsk. And Ukraine's military says it believes Russian troops near Kyiv are taking up new positions, possibly for an imminent assault on the capital. There are fears that Russia could deliberately cause an explosion at a nuclear power station and blame it on Ukraine, or use a chemical or biological weapon and again blame it on Ukraine. Such false flag tactics Russia used over and over again in Syria, and Western officials fear could try here. Chris Brown, CBC News, Lviv, Ukraine.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has wrapped up a 5-day trip to Europe. He visited Britain, Germany, Latvia, and Poland and met with leaders about helping Ukraine and increasing pressure on Russia to end its invasion. Today, Trudeau announced sanctions on more Russians. As Travis Danraj explains, it includes an oligarch who is a major shareholder in a company that runs a steel mill in Regina.
The Prime Minister announced new sanctions against 5 former Russian senior officials and associates of the regime today. He says all have been complicit in the invasion. They include a notable name who until now has evaded consequences, Roman Abramovich, whose assets have been frozen.
This is part of us moving together with allies around the world on demonstrating clear and deep consequences for Putin and those who have enabled his regime.
On the millions trying to flee the war zone, Trudeau spoke with refugees in Warsaw yesterday. He says Canada is stepping up and is not ruling out potential airlifts.
We know how important it is to be there to support people fleeing. The connection between Ukraine and Canada is deep, goes back decades, over a century.
After attacks by Russian forces on multiple hospitals and the increasing threat of a chemical or nuclear attack, the Prime Minister says diplomatic channels remain open to the Kremlin. This week's show of unity and increasing sanctions that have pushed the Russian economy to the brink will continue to be the West strategy moving forward.
We have seen the collapse of the Russian economy, the collapse of the ruble, the shutdown continually of the Russian stock exchange.
Trudeau says at this point there is no win for Putin, and as pressure increases, the war rages on, the deaths mount. Potential off-ramps for a climb down from the Kremlin hard to see on the horizon. Travis Stanrich, CBC News, Warsaw.
When Simon Stiles paid $5,000 for a boat, he was sure he'd gotten a good deal. While he laughs at the price and has no regrets over his decision to put his life to sea after this.
Good afternoon, I'm Shadow Stevens. Welcome to a Friday afternoon. 4 o'clock, we'll kick off the Coast 800 Portable Weekend for the very, very last time.
It's moving day at Coast Radio in Langley, packing away tons of equipment for the Monday opening of new offices in Vancouver. But even with the moving boxes filling up the studios, the hits just keep on coming, and the chatter of the DJs. Today, that chatter told of a problem.
And what happens? We get an unexpected visitor called Michelangelo. He's taken over the computer system at Coast 800.
Elaine, what happened?
What happened? Well, Linda come and got me from around the corner and said she thought I better go see Eric. And I walked up to Eric and said, yes, here I am. And he says, what do you know about Michelangelo? I said, not much. He said, you know, it's a bug, a virus in the computer. And I said, yes. And he said, it hits your computer.
Coast called the computer repair guys. They conducted tests, but it was too late. Months of programming had disappeared, gone to megabyte Valhalla, and Coast Radio was not alone.
Actually, at noon today, I went back to the shop to get some things to test this specific computer that's been acting up. And there was 4 systems on the bench at that point that had died due to Michelangelo.
The story was the same across the globe. Computer systems crashed in the US, in South Africa, and Europe. Why? Because even though people knew the virus was scheduled to wipe out databanks today, Michelangelo's birthday, they took no precautions. They did take precautions here at the University of British Columbia Computer Center. The university has 5,000 computers. Every one was checked with a virus-seeking program.
It was a lot of work because a lot of people were obviously very concerned, and rightfully so. Nobody ever wants to lose data or have any of their programs damaged on their computers.
Only 2 computers had Michelangelo, and it was removed before today. All the rest were clean. But that's no consolation to Elaine Lakey at Coast Radio.
Elaine, what personal message do you have for the person who invented this Michelangelo bug?
I would really like to know just what personal satisfaction he gets out of destroying people's work.
It's gone from maliciousness to, or from mischievousness to maliciousness, and it's vandalism.
So Lakey is in the electronic dark for the next while. She plans to spend that time with more user-friendly equipment. For the CBC Evening News, I'm Bob Nixon in Langley.
As rental housing prices climb ever higher, some people are getting very creative about what they call home. Simon Stiles decided he was going to take to the water. But that journey seaside wasn't without some challenges. Have a look.
Honey, come on. Good girl. Let's go.
Life off-grid has a romantic appeal, and I get the romance. There's plenty of great days and fantastic Instagram photos to get you inspired. But what it really requires is someone who can live in balance and deal with what they have and prepare for what's coming. Now, if you throw the ocean into that, well, it takes a little bit more, mainly stubbornness.
This
is what happened.
Yeah.
Oh.
Supposedly somebody sliced an anchor line, even though we were holding. Let it be known, you can't trust a sailor in a storm. This is the 10th day in a row of windstorms. So far my boat hasn't broken loose. And I think there's a boat in the back that's being smashed to pieces right now on the rocks, but I can't do anything about it. Yeah, maybe I'll just wear a life jacket to bed. Now, 5 years ago, I was traveling the world in a camper van, and I didn't know any of this stuff about living off grid, really, and I didn't know anything about living on the water, especially. I was completely enamored with the romantic idea of living off grid on a fossil fuel-free sailboat. There's a saying about boats: the best day of being a boat owner is the day you buy her and the day you sell her. Well, this is the day I bought her. I bought a boat, Mom.
He's bought it.
I bought a boat.
Wow.
Today, I'm gonna see the boat for the first time. I'm excited and nervous. Oh, but I have a really good feeling about it, so gonna go with my gut. When it comes to boats, there's no shortage of sayings. Another one is, boat is a hole in the water for you to throw money into. In this case, $5,000. I definitely didn't get what I paid for. Had I known then what I know now, I probably would have tucked tail and run away, but I didn't know anything back then. And this whole journey has been nothing but learning, sometimes the hard way. And so I got to work, and there was no shortage of work to do. I would pull rotting plank after rotting plank away, only to find more rot underneath. But slowly, I started integrating into my community here. I started working at the food bank because I could get a free shower there, and I finally brought the boat over to Silva Bay and did my first haul out. I'm not entirely sure why they trusted me to go on their rail, but lifting the boat up and removing keels and fixing miles of fiberglass, I think things were going too well. I think we were getting a lot of work done. We got a lot of sanding done. Got the boat squared away, so Mother Nature gave me some snow. I guess I must have impressed them because they gave me a job. I can't tell you how transformational this was. The absolute paradigm shift that working at a shipyard was, to be surrounded by mechanics and shipwrights, fine woodworkers and rigging experts, sailmakers, it was really something else. I started to get confident because I stopped making as many mistakes. I started setting out on my own adventures, sailing, motorcycling, backpacking, getting a little taste of what I was doing this for. So after 4 years, I've built myself a home, and it's not done, and I still got a ways to go. But what I've also done is picked up 1.5 million new skills. It's been a fantastic learning experience, and that's the part I really enjoy. It's picking up new skills, it's immersing myself in a community, it's really getting to know a place. And I guess that's always what I wanted. But I'm really looking forward to lifting anchor and setting sail.
Okay, someone discovers how to reverse the magnetic poles of the whole world, and they hold everyone hostage. Or else everybody will be upside down.
Take 3 comics, put them in a room, and ask them to write a sci-fi series. The hilarious results and the podcast that came out of it. We're going to speak with the Vancouver trio right after this. And at 6:42, a live look at cloudy Tofino, back to the familiar across the South Coast. Cloud and rain. Your weekend forecast and beyond is next.
So we asked Andre to show us what we could do to drive smarter.
For starters, drive within the speed limit and at a consistent speed. People will love you for it. See what I mean?
Dump the junk in the trunk. 45 kilos can improve about 1% efficiency.
So remove all unnecessary items. It's just that way. Service your ride regularly. Or have a real mechanic do it for you. Now here's something even I can do. Check the tire pressure. This is something you should do once a month. We're good. Avoid hard braking unless it's an absolute emergency. And I think this scenario would qualify.
The left-hander at turn 3 is straight bottom down now. And here he is. Is everybody going to be able to make it through? There's a few contacts further.
Follow Andre's tips and you could cut the carbon produced by your car as much as 20%, removing tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. Wait a minute. What does a ton of carbon even look like? Pretty freaking big, huh? If every driver in Italy followed Andre's tips, they'd cut carbon emissions by nearly 4 million tons. That's enough 1-ton balls of carbon to fill 1,680 coliseums. And that's just Italy.
And one more thing. If you really want to reduce your impact on the environment, go hybrid. Or even better, full electric. Think of it as a plug for the planet.
Johanna Wagstaff is taking a night off, so Fiona Odlum joins us again with a full look at the BC forecast. Sun was lovely while it lasted, Fiona, but we're in store for the wet stuff.
You're right. It was a great week. Lots of great sunshine, but we're going to trade that sunshine for a little bit of rain. And a little bit, I mean a lot. But first of all, let's talk about the wind. So we are going to look for a little bit of a gale force wind warning here along the coastline. Now, yesterday that expanded all the way up the entire province, and now it's really compacted in towards the regions of Ucluelet and Tofino. We're going to see those wind gusts into the 40s and 50s into this region. It stays pretty consistent like that throughout the weekend. The wind does start to curve around and it starts to pick up towards Victoria. So watch for wind gusts Saturday night into the 60s and 70s. It will stay consistently windy. We get a little break Saturday night and then it starts back up again Sunday morning. So unfortunately, Sunday morning is going to be rather breezy. Now, here's all the moisture that we've been looking for. It was a bit of a delayed start for March. This is our big month for getting moisture. So first of all, we had this low here. We started dealing with this one earlier this morning. It's going to start moving itself out of the way. And this low, as it starts to come in, it actually weakens a little bit, and we could see a couple moments of sunshine tomorrow around midday. But as we look towards tomorrow afternoon, all eyes are on this low right here. It's going to bring significant rainfall, about 20 millimeters of rain, all the way in. And as it comes into the mainland area, we are going to be looking for that to transition into snow. So definitely some travel concerns as you're moving through the Alpine region. Now look at these two girls here, the twin sisters of trouble. They're going to bring a lot of rain. It's going to be unrelenting rain, unstoppable. Okay, I'm being dramatic. We're looking for upwards to 75 millimeters of rain as it comes through, but that's not the only pass. We're going to see more throughout the next week. Okay, so tonight, -5 in Prince George with a snow-rain mix, in Williams Lake as well, and in Kelowna. Now, we could see a little bit of moonlight tonight over in Port Hardy. Rain definitely for Victoria. We're looking for rain shower activity and maybe some sunshine tomorrow in Prince Rupert. Now, we're going to look for rain tonight and into the overnight. Moments of sunshine tomorrow, a little bit of rain again in the afternoon, and then rain moving into the evening. Our 7-day forecast looks like 5 millimeters of rain tomorrow in Vancouver, 20 on Sunday, and up to 50 on Monday. And don't forget to set your clocks ahead an hour because it is daylight saving.
Twin sisters, a little warning next time, Fiona. Thank you. You ever look up at the stars and wonder if there are beings on other planets? Oh, and if they're funny? Well, a group of Vancouver comedians are exploring science fiction in the new CBC podcast, Let's Make a Sci-Fi.
A group of mercenaries are flying through the universe hunting and killing black holes.
What do you call it?
Hole hunters.
Over 8 episodes, comedians Ryan Beale, Maddie Kelly, and Mark Chavez are going to try to write a legitimate science fiction show. During their trek among the stars, the trio will consult legends of the genre for help like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Emily van der Werf, and Neil Blomkamp, among others. We spoke with the trio earlier today. Ryan Beale.
Yes.
First to you, how did all of this come about?
The idea for the podcast has been kicking around in the brain of someone named Pat Kelly, who actually CBC fans might remember from This Is That. And they have a production house in town called Kelly and Kelly, they being Chris Kelly and Pat Kelly. And he has had this idea in his head for years about what if 3 comedians or a group of comedians could try to write a sci-fi because it's A, super hard to pull off, and B, very easy to make fun of. Can we take ourselves seriously enough to get through it? And so that idea got passed to me, and the other Kelly from Kelly and Kelly, Chris Kelly, and I developed it into a pitch, which we pitched at CBC, and they went for it. Yeah.
For better or for worse?
For better or for worse,
there we
really.
go. And we're going to find out.
Yeah, we're going to find out.
So on the genre of sci-fi, Maddie, what is it about sci-fi that lends itself to that kind of humor, beyond just the idea of the geekdom?
I think beyond the geekdom, it's like everything is possible in sci-fi, which was great for us as comedians. That was the whole idea, that we were going to be really generative. But also it was like, is there going to be aliens? Is there going to be robots? Is it going to be in outer space? Is it in the past? Is it in the future? Is it a real world? We actually found that was one of the biggest challenges with the whole thing is like, how do you pick?
Yeah.
You have so many ideas and you can do any of them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so how do you land on those ideas, Mark? Given that you have this literal and figurative universe, you're like, we can do what we want.
Yeah, well, we started with a really giant, clean, blank slate with any ideas we wanted to throw into the pile. And we a lot of them we laughed at because they were very funny.
And those are my ideas, and they were not very good. They were not very good.
They were good. They were just good for comedy or for not using. And then we voted. We just kind of like picked around, decided what our favorite one was. We went with that because we had to also make a decision. We had to go. We couldn't just sit and ruminate too long. So we just decided on one thing and we went with it. And it takes place in space. That's a spoiler, but it does take place in space.
That does help the whole business.
It certainly does.
Now,
there's nothing more sci-fi than space.
Yeah, it's true.
How do you rope in Rainn Wilson, Neil deGrasse Tyson, all of these famous faces, and because there's comedy not just from you three, but from them too. They're diving into this with a great deal of enthusiasm.
I think when the idea was pitched to people, they were just like, this sounds fun, this sounds cool, because it's not only just an exploration of science fiction, but it's a little bit of behind the scenes about how things are written, how scripts get created, how we go from just an idea or a blank slate, like Mark said, to a fully realized script that could get produced. So I think Maybe, I don't know. I'm not in all their heads. But the people who agreed to be guests on our podcast were very intrigued by the idea.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for writers, Maddie, what can they take away from this? Even if they're not like comedy writers, because God knows we've got people that want to get into writing, but they can be nervous. They don't know where to start. Like, as you said, sort of the universe is too big.
I think you're going to start in the wrong place. We did.
Yeah.
We went down the wrong road for a very long time. And I think that the thing is you just keep going. Like, we had each other. We love working together, and that really helps. You just, like, it's always fun, and we make it fun for each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just keep writing it and until you hit the page count. And then you're going to have to restart anyway. But it's just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a blessing and a curse, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Yes.
Now, for people who want to learn more about this, give us the deets. Where can they hear it? And how long does the series last?
Mark?
Well, it 8 episodes long. You can hear it right now on the CBC Listen app or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah. And it's also 8 and a bonus episode, because you can listen to just the 8 episodes, but you can also listen to a full read-through of our pilot script that we wrote with actors, all the warts, all the good things, everything bad and good all in one. You don't have to listen to the full full script read-through, but you can, and I suggest you do.
So it's actually you don't. That's just me.
So it's kind of 9 episodes, but 8 really. Yeah, 8 and a bit.
Well, it's intriguing. Thank you so much. All the best. Can't wait to listen to it. Ryan Beal, Maddie Kelly, Mark Chevis, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
us.
The Toronto Zoo's newest member now has a name, thankfully. You'll meet the not-so-small bundle of joy after this.
Well, you know what makes it a good day for today is the fact that it's warm.
Angela Bishop is a self-described winter child. The Métis woman lives near the Fish Lake Métis settlement, a designated heritage site about 40 kilometers north of Prince Albert. She is taking me on a 4-kilometer snowshoe jaunt to the site's camp kitchen. And it's not easy. But this is just a day in the life for Bishop.
I'm out every day, and I spend like every single day for the past 5 years without missing a day. I've walked 5 kilometers, and in some cases more than 5 kilometers a day outdoors.
Whether it's minus 40, she's traveling, or even if she's sick, Bishop is outside getting her steps in, with no intention of ever missing a day.
I can spend like 6 hours a day, if not more, outside.
She says it connects her to the land in a special way.
To be out on the land, like to be close to nature, or an area where you can walk unencumbered without feeling worried that you're going to have to stop at lights or whatever. It's really nice, and you have the opportunity to see so many things and to explore. Sometimes I forget that I'm out doing a walk, and I might end up stopping. Like if I come in here, I'll say, oh my goodness, there's all these hazelnuts, and then you stop and pick a bit and then keep going.
At the Fish Lake Camp Kitchen, we're greeted by Fish Lake resident Tina Satie, offering us fresh bannock, hot dogs, beans, and hot tea. The kitchen was built by and for the Métis community.
Monica!
Bishop reminisces about dog sledding as a child at Fish Lake's sister Métis settlement, Green Lake. In fact, most of her stories are about being outside during Saskatchewan's winters, including snowshoeing as a little girl.
I remember as a little girl, we have a creek running behind my house in Green Lake, and going down the creek, and I'd get to a certain point where I'd get tired, and I just flop back in the snow and just lay there and look at the sky. And I remember that feeling of how wonderful it was just to lay back, like after doing that work, and I was young, just having that feeling like, wow, this feels so nice. And it does. The cool air is invigorating. Come on, buddy. Come
Mika, let's go.
If that's not a reason to get outside and play in the snow, I don't know what is. Laura Sharpaletti, CBC News, Fish Lake.
The Toronto Zoo now has a name for the gawky baby giraffe born last month. Take a look. Its gender is still unknown, but it will be known as Matumaini. It means hope in Swahili. The not-so-little bundle of joy has an older sister as well. She was separated from her mom during her birthing process, but will soon return to meet her new sibling. Fewer than 35,000 Maasai giraffes roam the wild, and the species is considered endangered. Lovely to see a new addition. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6 tonight and all this long week. You can watch our newscast on CBC Gem, the free app, and on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and the website, of course, cbc.ca/BC. Zara Premji will have your next local news tonight at 11 o'clock, right after the National. We're going to leave you with some scenes from Kamloops this past fall. Very scenic. Have a great weekend. Please stay safe.